Hi, Teri here from Stamping Magic. Welcome back to my channel. Today's project is another very cute card created using the Little Ladybug stamp set. I've also used paper from the Neutral 6-inch paper pack. And this is a Peekaboo card, or that's what I'm calling it anyway. You just lift the flap and it reveals another hidden ladybug. How cute is that? Today's card is going to be a little bit different. Instead of just carrying one of the flowers through to the inside panel, I'm going to do all of them. So let's get started. These are all the measurements you need for all the elements required to create this project. So if you are interested in reproducing it, you can take a screenshot and refer to it later. This is the Little Ladybug stamp set. You have 4 main images of ladybugs, a little ladybug border, this gorgeous flower, and lots of sentiments to choose from. I'm going to stamp my flowers onto 2 panels of Whisper White card. Now one is for the very front of the card and the other one is for the hidden panel. I'm using an acetate sheet to help me position the flowers and stop my cardstock getting grubby. I'm using Memento Tuxedo Black ink for all the stamping today. I'm going to position my stamp on top of that acetate, which is on top of my cardstock, which is pushed right into that top right hand corner. Then I can pick up my stamp, ink it up and stamp it down. Then I can replace my white mat with my second mat and repeat the process, and this will stamp the flower in exactly the same position. I've pre-stamped and cut out lots of masks for this flower. Most of them were from previous projects, but you can reuse them. Now I've cut out enough to have 1 per flower, and there's 6 flowers in all, but you could get away with half that amount, but it's an awful lot of faffing about moving the masks from one flower to another, so I didn't want to do that. So I'm going to cover the flowers with the masks that I've created, both the flower heads and the stems and leaves, and then I can proceed with the next part. So I've repositioned my white panel into that top right corner, added my acetate sheet, and now I'm going to position my second flower. Once I'm happy with the position, I can pick it up with the plate, remove the acetate, ink up my stamp and stamp it down. Then I can repeat this for the second white panel. You will then need to cover both these second flowers with more masks. For my final flower, I'm going to turn my cardstock in the Stamparatus. Now my final flower will overhang the cardstock just slightly, so I want to give it plenty of room. So I've positioned my cardstock, I've covered it with the acetate sheet, and now I can position my stamp. And once I'm happy, I'll pick it up with the plate, ink it up and stamp it down, then repeat again for the second panel. And then I can cover these flowers with more masks. I'm now using a sponge dauber to apply Pool Party ink all around my flowers. Now I didn't want this to be an even smooth blend by any means. I just wanted to add the colour but have some variation, so some bits of white showing through, some areas lighter, some darker. And the sponge dauber is the best tool to do this. And then once you're happy, you can remove the masks from the panel and then repeat the whole thing for the second panel. I need 3 ladybugs for my card. The flying one, the one peeking over her shoulder, and then I'm going to change up the third one I'm using and use the one with the little flower this time. And all of these were stamped with Memento Tuxedo Black ink. I'm also going to stamp my sentiment using Memento Tuxedo Black ink, and this I'll punch out using the classic label punch. I'm going to make sure I get my sentiment right up near the point on the left hand side and punch it, and then I can square off the right hand side. The end of the stems on the first sets of flowers that I stamped are sort of floating in midair, so I'm going to correct this using a black pen. I'm just going to extend the line to the other flower stem. I did also add some light flirty flamingo to the cheeks of the ladybugs. I haven't got the coordinating dies for this set, so I'll cut these out by hand. Once your flower panels have been coloured, you want to decide which one you want to use for the front of the card, and that's the one we're going to cut. Now I'm going to use one of the stitched shapes square dies, and this is the largest of them. I'm positioning this onto the panel and I'm making sure that I've got an even border on the left and right side. Then you can position it vertically wherever you want it on your panel. I'm securing it with washi tape and then I'm going to spin it round so the flowers are upside down. And then when I position the acrylic plate, I'm not going to cover the die completely. I want to position the back edge just above that last bar on the die, if that makes sense, because I don't want that to be cut. And then when I remove the die carefully, because you don't want that washi to tear the card, you can see that the side edges and the bottom edge have been cut, but not the top edge. If you put both panels together now and lift the flap, you should see a continuation of the flowers through to the inside. They should match up perfectly. You can now go ahead and score between the left and right edges at the top of that flap. Before I trim down my panels, I'm going to put the rest of my card together. Now, my card base is in grey granite. It's half a standard sheet of card, scored in the middle and folded to create a portrait card. Then I have a mat of lovely lipstick and a mat of Neutrals Designer Series paper from the 6-inch stack. This is also in grey granite. For the inside of the card, I have a Whisper White mat. I have another strip of the Designer Series paper and a little strip of lovely lipstick card, which I'm going to mount it onto. Then I'll add that to the bottom of the white panel and position it inside my card. It's entirely up to you how small you want to make these panels. Now you need to keep the width of them as is, so that's not going to change, but the height of them you can make however tall you want. Now I'm going to start by making the height the same as the width, so for me that's 9.5 centimeters. For 8.5 by 11 inch users, that's 3 7/8 of an inch. What you don't want to do is make them too short, so it's best to do it in stages. Now you must cut these panels together at the same time. I've just put pencil marks on the edge of my card showing me where the 9.5 centimeter mark would be. So I've got my aperture centered within that. So I've cut off the bottom edge and now I'm going to cut off the top edge. The lovely lipstick mat that will go underneath the panels needs to be trimmed down just so you've got a small narrow border at the top and bottom. I can now position this panel onto the front of the card and see how it looks with my other elements. So I can see straight away that my little ladybug at the bottom, there's not really enough room for it, and I've got a lot of sky area at the top of the card. I can't put my flying ladybug right to the top because it will go over the score line on that panel, so I know I need to cut off some more. I decided to cut off another centimetre or 5/8 of an inch if you're in the US, and I'm doing this in equal amounts from the bottom and from the top. And again, make sure you're cutting both those panels together at the same time so they will remain identical. You'll also want to trim off the same amount from the lovely lipstick mat. Then you can go ahead and check that it looks okay on your card base. I'm now going to layer the two panels together, and I'm going to apply my glue to the panel with the flap cut out. And you just want to apply the glue around the edges, don't put it anywhere near the flap itself. And then just layer it on top of the other panel. You probably didn't notice it earlier, but on my original card I have embossed this panel, and I used the subtle embossing folder for this. Now you could run this through before you glue the two sections together, but it's absolutely fine to do it afterwards. Just make sure the glue is perfectly dry before you emboss it. And this is how it looks once it's been done. I'm going to add a little tab to help the recipient open this panel, and I'm using my 1/2 inch punch for this. I'm just punching it out of some scrap lovely lipstick card. Now I've put a little pencil mark halfway across the front of my panel door. I'm going to add glue halfway down my little 1/2 inch circle. Then I can position it at the halfway point behind that little door. Now I want to cover up the back side to that front panel so you can't see where the alcohol markers have bled through, and I'm using a little white, well, squarish for this of Whisper White card, and this will also cover the top part of that little circle tab as well. Now I've given you the approximate measurements for this, but you want to test it first, and test it by sitting it inside the recess on that back panel. Okay, and just make sure it fits nicely. If it doesn't, then trim a bit off the top or the bottom edge. Then all you need to do is cover the top with glue, slide it back into that recess and press the flap down onto it, and then keep that flap raised until the glue is completely dry. The next thing I'm going to do is layer the panel onto the lovely lipstick mat. So I'm just going to add glue to the back and then position it so I've got a thin border showing at the top and the bottom of the panel. Just to mention here, I haven't burnished that score line that I made on the flap, and that is purposely. If I bent it back and burnished it, then the flap would remain wide open almost for the duration. Because I haven't burnished it, then it's quite easy to press the flap down and it will stay almost flat. So you've just seen me position that little ladybug inside the card, and now I'm going to layer the panel onto the lovely lipstick mat. If you do notice any sticky or tackiness inside that panel, just dab it lightly with an embossing buddy and wipe it to clear any excess powder, and that will remove all of it. I can now go ahead and add glue to the back of the panel, and then I can position it onto the front of my card base. and I'm just positioning the top edge 3 gingham squares down. And I can use those squares to make sure it's nice and straight. Now, positioning my ladybugs, be careful if you position your flying one at the top. You don't want it to go higher than the score line you made on that flap, and you don't want any of the dimensionals to extend past the edge of the flap. Otherwise it'll be glued shut. And then I can position my little ladybug with the flower, who is just adorable. And then finally my sentiment. And that's it, my card is now complete. A really sweet card. I do love these images. And it's not too complex a card to complete. The colouring took more time than anything. And here's another look at my original card, so you can see the difference. I used a different image on the bottom and switched the sentiment to the other side. And I didn't extend all the flowers through to the inside panel. Thank you for joining me today. I hope you enjoyed this project. If you did, please give it a thumbs up and don't forget to subscribe and hit that notifications bell so you don't miss out on any future videos. Bye for now.